Welcome at the next Women and Chicks Working Wonders Table Talks. Today I'm talking with Hans Meyer, co-founder of Zoku, Maaike de Reuver, editor-in-chief of Food Inspiration, and Marie van Niekerk, former creative director of Boss Iced Tea. Welcome all.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did a short intro on all of you, but maybe you can tell a little bit more about yourself, the company that you're representing, and why you're here today, because we're talking Let's Entertain Consumption, and it's about retail, hospitality, the entertainment industry, and how in these, crazy and uncertain times of COVID-19, how you're handling yourself and the industry. Hans.
Okay, thank you. I'm Hans Meyer, I'm co-founder of Zoku. I run the company together with Mark Jongerius. Zoku is a home office hybrid with hotel services with the social buzz of a thriving neighborhood. The first one opened here in 2016 in Amsterdam, and we're planning to open in December in Copenhagen, next year March in Vienna, and in November in 2021 in Paris.
Wow, so you're still going international.
We're absolutely going international.
Love to get a little bit more into that.
Sure.
After Maaike, maybe you can tell a little bit more about yourself and Food Inspiration and your background, because it's also We Canteen, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I studied here at the University of Amsterdam when I lived in Amsterdam, and what we saw there was that in the canteen, we were not so happy about the offer in the canteen. It was not so healthy. It was really expensive, and we didn't want to go. A lot of students didn't want to go there to have their lunch there. So that's when we started We Canteen, a catering company where we ask local entrepreneurs to come into the canteen and provide their own offer. So like the foodhallen and all these food courts you now have also in the Netherlands and worldwide. So that's when I started to work in the hospitality industry, and 5 years ago I sold the company, and now I'm editor-in-chief for Food Inspiration, which is an inspiration platform for all people working in the food industry, so also for you guys.
Nice, great. And Marie?
Yes, I'm Marie van Niekerk. I am the creative director at Boss Iced Tea, but I've literally just stepped out operationally from the company. I was involved right from the beginning. We started it in 2010 in Cape Town. It's a South African brand. Boss is short for rooibos, which is our magic ingredient, and which only grows in South Africa, and actually only in a very small part of the Cederberg, just outside of Cape Town. So the idea with Boss was to shake up the iced tea industry. At the time when we launched, there was really no innovation in that space. Our philosophy has always been that healthy can be fun, and with Boss we really took that and packaged that in a way with the bright colors and with the type of marketing that we did, and with all the creative self-expression and being involved in music and art and design and surfing and all the sort of good things in life. And so the idea was always to create an international brand. We launched in 2010. It was incredibly well adopted in South Africa, and very early on success. We then launched into Europe in 2015, and that's when I moved to Amsterdam to come and help set up the offices here. And then also in Paris later, and about 2 years ago we started operating in California in the United States. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Great. So I think the three of you, your main topic that you have in common is being an innovator and seeing a space that's really set in its structure and wanting to change that. I think all three of you have done that in your own right. So if you look at the entertainment, the retail, the hospitality space as it is right now, looking back 6 months ago, what's your thoughts on that, and how do you see us moving forward?
That is the question.
It's a big question, I know. Yeah. So that's also
yes.
Like the idea behind these talks is let's wonder about that together, and maybe we can come to some creative new solutions, or even if we just see challenges ahead, and maybe we can come to a solution on how to tackle that, or even just a big question to end on to see what's next. So looking back 6 months ago and where you're at now with Zoku, I mean, you talked about also the dependence on the neighborhood or the collaboration with the neighborhood, and everything shut down. What did you do? How did you handle that?
Well, first of all, we already in January we saw the situation happening in China. And so in February we set up a kind of a task force within Zoku to follow on a daily basis the developments. And of course, when the lockdown came, it had a huge impact on our industry. Basically, what happened here in Amsterdam is 90% of the revenue just went down the drain. And that was basically sector-wide. So at that time, I think more than 250 hotels decided to close down, which we've never seen before. I mean, during never in in my life, and I think even in hospitality life, the crisis was so bad in our industry. So it was a kind of an addition with the 2008 and the Gulf War and then September 11, everything together. And our business models are a little bit resilient. I mean, if you go from 90% occupancy to 60% occupancy, you definitely will survive. But if you go to 10% occupancy, you really have to act. So our first priority, of course, was, okay, what about safety of our guests and our employees? Because at that time there was not a lot of information yet on COVID-19 and the implications, so that has had quite a big impact. But at the same time, what we learned during previous crises, I mean, in our industry, there are, I think, a few things very important is that you act very fast, and that you also act very forceful. So you shouldn't hesitate. And that's basically what we did in the first stage. And we basically worked together with our teams in order to, what can we do during this crisis? And the first thing, of course, is that you look very critical to costs. You are going to in conversations with all your partners and your suppliers and look for ways where you can help each other, because basically everybody's in the same boat, but we have great suppliers and everybody wanted to think with us. And of course you look to your investment, because as I told you before, we're going to expand Zoku internationally. But of course, investments, we had to have a very close look. What can we cut? What can we postpone? And that was only the first stage of the entire thing, what was going on.
And are there also external investors involved in the investments that you mentioned with expanding? And how were they?
Well, actually, we have a few fantastic shareholders. And I think for shareholders, it's very much important. I mean, everybody saw this is a kind of event which is beyond everybody's control. And we feel that the only thing that investors want is that you, act like I said before, you're doing the right things. And the right things are acting fast, the right things are acting forceful, but at the same time, the right things are also, okay, this is the situation that we're in today, how are we going to deal with that? Because a lot of hotels, they closed down, and we actually felt, okay, for us that wasn't the right thing to do. First of all, we still had guests, because we are more focused on the extended stay segment, so we had quite some guests. But at the same time, we also believe that it's a great opportunity to, look for opportunities, how you can deal with this crisis. And for that, you need time, you need energy, you need focus, you need people. So we were absolutely grateful that all our people basically stick together, although we were not physically at the same space, but we had a real focus, just to do the best for the company as we could.
Can I ask you something? It sounds like you're talking about like the past, what has been, how the situation has been in a couple of months, and maybe for a lot of the people in the country, it feels like we're coming out of the crisis now. We're going on holidays, we're going even to other countries now. Well, for people in the hospitality industry, a lot of restaurant owners we speak to, they tell us we're still in the middle of it, in the middle of the crisis. Well, a lot of people don't really see that.
Recognize it.
If you cycle through Amsterdam, it feels almost back to normal. It's like you see everyone drinking outside and eating, and it feels like it's sort of
for the outside world.
Because there was a research numbers that came live, I think around 2 weeks ago, stating that 25% of restaurants in the Netherlands are already technically bankrupt. And 75% feel that they're not going to make it through the end of the year.
Yeah.
75%.
75%
Yeah.
thinks they're not going to make it.
But so if 25% are bankrupt, then 75, then that's 100%.
Oh, there's 25% that's already there, but they survive on extended loan payments, a little
they're not
government
bankrupt,
support.
financially bankrupt.
And then you have an additional 50% that says, well, we are not sure if we're going to make it to the end of the year if this situation keeps continuing the way that it has, even with the liberations that we have. Because I know, like, for instance, in my college days, I used to work in restaurants back in Utrecht, and one of them actually also said, like, with in a normal capacity, because they have big venues that they rent out, weddings, meetings. Their peak is actually not summertime because they don't have a big terrace, but it's really that autumny, everyone coming back to work, having drinks, meeting up again after the summer, and people aren't booking the drinks. Companies aren't booking the drinks because it's not safe to have networking drinks together. So, and where their usual capacity is 600 people within the entire building, now within the meter and a half economy, it's around 85.
Sure. Yeah, and the hard cost doesn't stop.
Yeah, and you can say, like, we have these liberations again where, I think in the Netherlands it's never been that bad that we couldn't go out. So there's also that different experience of how we've experienced the crisis, where Spain, I think it was 58 days that they had really lockdown, and you could only go, one person could go outside to do some groceries, and you should go to the nearest shop. But the impact is still there. And Mike, you say you're speaking to a lot of restaurateurs that are feeling that pain. How do you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
I see, but I can imagine it's hard to see for a lot of those people, because still now the restaurants are open again, people can go there again, but still there are all these rules and restrictions, and the restaurant owners don't even know today what they have to follow or not. Customers don't know. Some of them stay home because they think I have to make a reservation. In some restaurants you have to, some you don't have to anymore. With how many people can I sit on the table and so on. There are so many questions. There are the answers, but it's not completely known what the situation is. That's why a lot of customers don't even still go to the restaurants, the bars, and so on. And it makes it really difficult for a lot of these, some restaurants, some bars are really small, and if you have to keep the 1.5 meter distance there, and still can only have 2 people from another household on a table, it's not the core of hospitality. In hospitality, you want to meet each other, and with your colleagues or your friends or family, you want to meet in those places. And for now, you cannot do it as the way we want to, and it's a big question. From which moment we can do it again, but that's it's a big question mark. But for now, you can see, of course, people are going out again, and we see that the numbers of people infected with the virus is going up.
That is a direct correlation.
Yeah, I can imagine the fear of all those people working in the hospitality industry for the coming months.
Oh, there's absolutely a kind of concern that on the last few days, I mean, we see the contamination is going up again, and of course, a lot of entrepreneurs in the industry are very much afraid of new rules and more strict rules and regulations, and that definitely will not help.
Yeah.
I mean, we had so everything is our mission is better together. So everything has been built on creating effortless connections between people. So we have community dinners where we sit with 10 people at a big table. As soon as you arrive at Zoku, you got a handshake. So where we had better together, we had to basically change the entire company and all our process procedures into better together but safer than ever. Yeah. So we absolutely believe in physical distancing, but we still try to create social connections here. But you have to be far more creative. And I actually understand the concern of many companies that it's very insecure at the moment.
So what's a creative solution that you guys came up with?
So the first thing what we did is that part of the so community always has been very important in Zoku, And partly what we did is we tried to do more digital at the moment. So we created kind of a digital platform that people can easily interact with each other. But at the same time, still, we basically changed our entire guest experience also on the top floor. So we created more space, of course, between everything. But we had everything located in a few areas. And for example, the meeting event space was in the back. Well, there's no meeting events at the moment. So we created one big top floor. So the normal vibe that you find in Zoco, you can still have it. It's only a little bit more spread out. And these are kind of solutions that we actually have the opportunity, because there are also restaurant owners that just don't have more space.
Yeah.
So, and especially if you have a very small restaurant, and if you're fully booked, you're finally able to create a decent income, but now you have to be spread out. So whatever happens, and if you don't have the opportunity to have a terrace either, I mean, you basically are stuck.
I mean, I think of Mediamatics. I mean, I think you've all seen the
glass houses.
The glass
Yeah.
houses. Mediamatics, it's like a genius solution, but that is a luxury to have space like that.
Well, the funny thing
Yeah.
was there
Yeah.
actually that they already had the glass houses,
Yeah.
which was an experience in its own. But now
Yes.
all of a sudden
It's
got
become the symbol of
the next
of-
big
yeah,
thing of
yeah.
how to
Yeah.
host that. But yeah, for
Yeah.
the ones that don't have the room or the
Yes.
flexibility, because for your industry, being the supplier to a lot
Yeah,
of
I mean,
these,
it's had a massive impact. You know, if you ask the question of like 6 months ago, if you had a crystal ball to look in to see what was going to happen, I mean, I remember very clearly, like we were 100% focusing on our horeca, on the on-trade channel strategy. You know, sort of January, February, and there was actually within Bos we were refocusing on that strategy after having focused quite a lot on the retail sector for the last 2-3 years. We were sort of diverting our attention back to the on-trade strategy, and I mean, if we had known that it would be completely closed down for the next few coming months, because that was in South Africa and in Europe and in the US, it was all the same thing. So 30-40% of our turnover is coming from the on-trade space. So it has had huge financial impacts for us as a supplier. Obviously, the retail, the supermarkets have benefited during this time because people were shopping more, cooking more at home, and just not going out. So you have to eat. People would often eat out during the week, or go out for meals. We're cooking at home, and you saw this new surge of home baking and everyone trying new recipes and really getting into that. So that's been a big new trend. So in that sense, I think there has been opportunity there. But as a small brand, what we also saw within the actual supermarket channel is that people were hamstering and pantry stocking and really focusing on the big brands, the big sort of top A brands that they know and they trust and they've known for a long time. It was not a time for exploration. They weren't browsing supermarket shelves and this looks interesting and let me try this. It's like none of that was happening. Obviously, a lot of online shopping was. I think people who've never tried grocery shopping online before has now for the first time tried it, and I believe it is a trend that will probably stay. But again, as a small brand, it was very hard to be top of mind within, say, an Albert Heijn online store or a Jumbo or any of the big supermarkets, because again, the big brands was dominating in that space, and it wasn't without trying. I mean, of course, our teams were trying to get visibility in that channels, but I think the supermarkets were also so overwhelmed with what they were dealing with that they were, they had the whole logistics and supply chain issues to deal with. So there wasn't much space for experimentation or for testing or for that sort of flexibility.
And looking at, because in your intro you mentioned rooibos,
yes,
and that being only coming from South Africa,
yes,
which I didn't know. But did you experience any trouble with getting to your own supply?
Luckily, that hasn't been affected. One of our partners, Richard Boucher, is actually our supplier of the Rooibos. So he's one of the co-founders. So it helps. He's also my brother-in-law, so that also helps even more. So we've got a very secure supply with our Rooibos and a very strong supply agreement. So that hasn't been affected. But I think the big shift the challenge for small brands like Boss or sort of challenger brands is in a crisis. People are anxious, they're fearful, they just divert to what they know, and they are not in an exploratory
that's what we see as well.
mood. And of course, we all hope that will shift again. The world will not stay like this.
It is
forever.
sort of contradictory to what Hans said, and I agree with you. Like, you have two options basically. It's either shut down or rev up the engine and being fast, moving forward and taking that next steps of action. Where you also see that the consumer side during a crisis, a pandemic, they're not really in the mood to try out new things. So how do you match those two together? Because we've seen the same things happening within the entrepreneurs of our network. You really saw two steps of action. They either shut down and were frightful, and if everyone said, like, let's see where it takes us, we're shutting down all new projects and stuff. And you had the ones that said, well, let's see what we can do, what we can change. One of the big container companies within our network that changed their containers into swimming pools.
Oh wow, amazing!
Just thinking of new interesting ideas. But you can come up with new interesting ideas. But is there a market for it if the consumer is actually saying, well?
Well, it's interesting what you say about the big brands. I actually see the opposite. So if you look to the hotel market, it's a very commoditized market. Basically, the majority of hotels, they all look the same. Rooms are the same. The only difference is basically the brand, the logo, the color. That's about it. And in a highly commoditized market, you can basically, in our industry, compete on two different things. You can compete on location and you can compete on price. Yeah. Location you cannot change, so basically you compete on price. What we actually see is that if you look to how the market is now running in Amsterdam, we do much better than the market. And I feel that's partly because we have a kind of a distinguishing proposition, we have a distinguishing product. The fact that we have the Zoku Loft, where in a normal hotel room is the bed, is always the most dominant piece of furniture. With us, the kitchen table is there. You can hide away the bed. So a lot of our lofts are used as workspace during the day. And all those kind of different edges and also the actions that we did over the last few months basically gave us a kind of a lot of attention also in the press. Yes. And actually, if I see now to the occupancy levels that we were able to achieve, of course, it's absolutely not at what it used to be, but if you compare it to the rest of the industry and the rest of the market, we do much better.
Fantastic.
So there is a kind of there's also kind of an opportunity here, especially for smaller brands. But I can totally relate because I feel that if you go for shopping, I definitely understand, and I also like that you share it with me because I never thought about it. But there are also other industries where there is an opportunity for the new kind of players. Yes. And just you definitely need to work harder than maybe the big brands with all their marketing power and their distribution systems. But fortunately, there are opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how do you see that with food inspiration and what you run? Is there a lot of new inspiring content to write about?
Every day, and since already since January, February, we started writing about it. We were planning to visit China in February, so we cancelled it somewhere in the beginning of February.
Why would you do that?
Well, we're going to Shanghai, and until somewhere January, we were still thinking, okay, Shanghai is so far from Wuhan, so we can still go there. There's nothing going on in Shanghai until, it was going on all over the world. But since the beginning, we do a lot of interviews and we write a lot about it, and it's changing every day, the situation. So people are every day searching for stories of other people, or how do other catering companies or hotel companies going on with the situation. So from the journalism side, is a really interesting time to share all these stories.
I can imagine that you guys must be busy as ever, and also,
we are, yeah,
and that, I mean, there's such a real need for that. I mean,
Yeah.
people really are looking for
Information, yeah.
and for ideas and for just that you're not alone in this. And I
Yeah.
actually heard a very interesting quote. It said that we are not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's such a nice quote, because I mean, like we're in a very different boat as you, or you know, we're all in the same storm.
Yeah.
And depending on your vehicle that you're in, it makes a big difference. So for someone like
and I think there has never been so much
busy
need
time
for
this,
information of other boats. How are they
Yeah,
doing?
yeah, exactly.
How do they survive? Do they survive? So for that, it's an interesting time. But of course, it's a really hard time for the entire world, but for some more than others. And what a positive thing is about hospitality and what we buy and what we eat is that you see, of course, the question for local products and the market for local products has been growing during the last couple of months extremely, with all these support your local boxes
exactly.
and farmers who told us they had never been so busy in the farm shops for people who were looking for local products and products from like the farmers and people who wanted to support the local shops and so on. And I'm working on writing an article right now about will it stay like that? Will we still whenever that may be, after the crisis, are we going back to what we were used to before, or are we still buying those local products?
Well, I was about to ask, because I mean we've had more crises in the last years, of course, and there's always this short shift in mentality, but then slowly but certainly we go back into our old patterns. Do you see that this might be something that will stick for a little longer? If you look at your own businesses, are you implementing permanent changes, or is it adjusting to the situation, but if we get back to normal, you'll also go back to normal?
Well, I think from our side, I mean, there's certain things that were introduced now during this time which I think will stick. The work from home setup has definitely proven to a lot of people that you do not need to be in the office every day to be able to be productive. So I think that flexibility will probably stay. I mean, I know within our organization it will be, and I'm sure that for many other people it will be the same. The amount of business travel, if I think how I used to travel in the last 10 years and now, you know, it just stopped. It was like, bam, it's not possible. So what you would normally do by getting on a train or getting on a plane to go somewhere, you now do through Zoom. Of course, there is definitely still a need for personal relationships, and you know, you do need to have some element of that. But once that's established, I think so much can be done through Zoom and Skype and all of those things. So those sort of trends are more in the background. I don't know exactly what you're asking for, but I think I think that this crisis is very different from the previous financial crisis, because it's also a health crisis. It's combined. It's this huge economic impact plus a real health crisis. People are afraid of getting sick, and they're afraid for their families to get sick and their parents. And it's not just, oh, you know, I don't have any more money or I'm losing my job. It's like an existential threat. You know, like people die from it. So it's a
definitely. I think I was also referring a little bit more to, for instance, we were all super excited and looking for positive news, of course, but super excited about the quality of air that got so much better with the cars staying home, the planes not taking off every 5 minutes or so. Canals cleared up, and we all saw the photos of Venice. And Venice actually surviving a little bit longer because all the big cruise ships aren't coming in. But also there's hybrid forms coming up of shopping experiences, food experiences, having dinners with smaller groups of people, but then have extended people join in through Zoom with a dinner box of the same meal. are there funny little quirks or solutions for a problem that we're in right now, or do you have the idea that you see a permanent change coming from it? Are we actually going to fly less? Or is it something that we're now just prohibited from doing, or we're scared for our lives, but as soon as we're not scared for our lives, are we booking our next plane ticket to Bali, where I think the entire Netherlands celebrates their summer vacations nowadays. So how permanent do you see the effects will be of what we're in right now?
I think definitely there will be certain areas they will be changed forever. So yes, I read an article that only 4% of the employees of ABN AMRO want to go back to the office 5 days a week. I mean, that's
only
that's
4%.
Only 4%. So that work from home, that definitely I think will change.
Yeah.
The second thing is that what I believe is that as soon as flying will be completely safe, then I also feel that a lot of people will jump on a plane, in any case for leisure activities, but I think also due to Zoom. I mean, in the past I went for a meeting in Madrid for 1 hour and I lost the full day with people that I already knew, so that definitely will change. With regards to hybrids, I think that is an interesting area. We experimented with that. So a few months ago, restaurant industry had difficulties, our industry had difficulties, so we were thinking, okay, can we work together somewhere to help each other? And then I reached out to Joris Beidendijk, the chef from Rijks. And given the fact that our lofts are more micro homes, we came on the idea, okay, let's try to create 50 private restaurants.
Wow.
Where Joris Beidendijk served with his team a four-course Michelin star dinner in the lofts. But at the same time, all those people were individually in their lofts. But at the same time, we connected all those people through Zoom.
Wow.
And then he was explaining about the food experience, and there were some things in the fridge that people need to prepare themselves. So actually, what we learned over there, that to combine on and offline in the same space, that's actually a very powerful thing. So we definitely are going to extend that more into our offerings.
I love it. I did a Rijks at home, just sort of takeout. Loved it. And that was one of the positive things for me, to see these high class restaurants all of a sudden being available and embracing it, but also I think like Joris posted some of the pictures of him just stepping on the bike and doing the deliveries himself as well, but that's one of the uniting things that I really saw happening.
And especially I mean then it was for them unable to operate the restaurants. Well, we had availability. It's a very nice way to find partners, and then okay, where can we help each other? And I think that's also what we've seen over the last few months. There's a lot of appetite and opportunity that people want to help each other. I mean, we had great conversations with our suppliers, but also other partnerships are really formed very easily and much faster than we did before.
And there's also what you say as well, the ease of having a meeting over Zoom. I think for me personally, like one of the daunting facts was that I don't need to have 8 hours of Zoom meetings because I'm way more productive than in face-to-face meetings. So limiting, like not booking my entire day with from one Zoom meeting to another, because in the end you're completely fried. But it is changing the way we work, and I think a lot of, in some ways, in the industries that don't rely on physical getting together, productivity has gone up.
There is, however, one thing, what I also experienced, I don't know how you experience with your own teams, but what I learned is that still the desire for social connection is huge.
That doesn't go away,
It's also, I think, for part of the people, I mean, work from home is ideal, but we also have quite a lot of people who rent a loft during the day because they get mad from home, or home is getting mad from them in a way. So I think it's not ideal, but what you see now, you could argue, okay, what happens with our offices for the future? Because we now talk to a lot of companies and they say, okay, why do I need an office? If we have work from home for 3-4 days per week, what's my office going to be then?
Yeah.
And it basically, office will change into a kind of a place where people are actually interacting, cooperating. But you could argue whether you should be in the office 8 hours a day, sitting behind your own computer, and then go home. What's the benefit of that?
Yeah. But I think there's a huge opportunity for Zoku, for instance, because if a lot of companies that no longer have their official offices and a lot of people work from home, to then meet at a Zoku once a week with a team to interact and maintain the social fabric of
So what will that do to our
You miss the
street?
creativity when you're working at home.
Yeah.
Productivity is going up.
Yeah.
Only working on your computer and sending emails, you can, of course, you can do it at home. But what we do now in our office is that we only meet in the office when we have like a brainstorm or a meeting where it's good to interact with each other, and that's really difficult.
Is it
with Zoom.
then enough for you to keep your office on, or would it be
No.
something that you say we're going to cancel our office and we're going to book?
We're looking at other if it's possible to have another office.
So
now.
what's going to do? What's going to
happen to the city?
How's that going to affect our city and our street image? I mean, we
Catering industry.
Catering industry. I mean, there's
Office
huge
investors.
effects.
Yeah.
I mean, there will be a huge effect, because what you currently have is a company. I'm starting up a company. I want to grow. I'm going to lease an office for 5 years.
Yeah.
I have to fit out the office. I have to manage the office.
The domino
I'm not
effect,
flexible. I don't know how I'm doing in 1 or 2 years, but this is the space I have. And if you spend, I think an office costs you around 43 euros per person per day if you include all costs. And if you add up that budget with your 5-year liability and guarantees and whatever things, I think a lot of companies are going to reconsider, okay, what is for me the most effective place? And I spoke to an entrepreneur a few weeks ago, and he said, well, with the amount that I spend on offices, so he currently is going to work from our space. He said it's half of the cost, and at the same time, I still have a kind of a nice, inspiring place. I'm fully flexible. If I have 5 employees more, it's fine. If I have 5 employees less, it's also fine. So there is actually an opportunity for hospitality here to go there.
Yeah.
The day before there was an article on Fast Company about it. Yesterday was an article on CNN about it. So actually what you see, and that's all, again the opportunities that you have, is how can you actually adapt as a sector and as a business model. And there are people who are wait and see what's going to happen. And there are operators who say, okay, let's dive into this opportunity. Am I able to adapt my company or my business model towards this kind of new needs? And I think that's very interesting at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you even think of all these hotels that are standing empty, and often during the day. You think, imagine you create a new business model where during the day it's office, hot desking, and at night people sleep in it. It's like just as a immediate turnaround. I mean, there is opportunity for that.
The interesting thing is if you compare it to, for example, Airbnb and Uber and all those kind of platforms, they're all about unused capacity.
Yeah.
I've got a car, and normal a car is 23 hours per day, it's standing still. So what can I do with this car? Airbnb, same thing. I've got space, what I'm going to do, and we also perceive it. We got a square meter of real estate. What can we do with it? And are you able to stack different business models on the same square meter, offering at a relatively then low price to a consumer something, but at the same time get a decent return? And I think all those kind of conversations, there are a lot of opportunities. Even in this time, there are companies, there are very smart women, very smart men who dive into these kind of opportunities. The only question is, who's the one?
But you very rightly said it's going to also affect the catering industry. I mean, if all these offices come empty, everyone's working from home, is that an industry that you see disappearing then? Or what's the change that they will need to make to stay relevant?
I think how the situation how it was is going to disappear. Like all these people who were going to the office almost every day, sometimes we did a day working from home, but most of the times we went to the office, we had lunch at 12 o'clock, we all came down standing in line to have your sandwich or whatever, and that's going to change. So of course there are a lot of opportunities, but we're in a time of change where all these catering companies, all these companies, restaurants, they are completely empty now. We continue, we have a catering a location in the World Trade Center in Amsterdam.
Sure.
there are about 50 people now every day having lunch there. Well, before it used to be like 1,200 people a day.
Jeez.
On a regular day.
1,200 to 50, wow.
1,200 to 50,
Wow.
yeah. And maybe it's going to change a little bit to, well, let's say 500 people a day, but still all these systems we had, they are going to change, or they are already changed. Like on the, what was it, the 15th of March when we started the lockdown. And that's not going back. We're not going back to how it was. And now we're in a time, and it's good that we have people like you who are thinking about opportunities, how we can change that. But of course you can imagine for all these people working there are not even working there anymore now, because these catering companies, they don't have the work, they don't have the money to pay all the people.
They don't
So
have any people there's no customers.
there are already a lot of people sitting at home and are already affected by the changes of
And I was curious you're so plugged into all the restaurants, we've seen a huge, obviously with Uber Eats and all of the Deliveroo and Taste Resort, that's been a trend that was pre-corona already, but we saw also like a pivot of a lot of these, we were talking about the restaurants creating pop-up experiences and embracing these home delivery and beautiful gourmet meals at your home. How have you seen the restaurants responding to that and creating experiences for people to have at home?
Well, most of them, of course, there are differences in it, but most of them they tell us that they did this delivery during the lockdown, so that people still had the connection with their favorite restaurant and they could still eat their meals at home. They didn't earn from it. So
they didn't earn from it.
Most of them they didn't, and a lot of them are already now, since they reopened again, they already stopped with the delivery because it costs a lot of time. They are not used to it, so they had to build it up.
Get a new system in place.
And now they are open again, and they just want to focus on the restaurant. So it's really, really for some it was really good to do it in that time, so people could still order it at home, and they were still a little bit seen on social media and so on. But it was not the big solution to save them all.
Well, I think, but I'm triggered a little bit by the canteens. So if you ask people if they work from home, what they actually miss is a kind of a social interaction. If we now look to the world, I just would like to test the idea at the table here. If you look to the world now, there's a lot of retail space will become available because retail doesn't work as well. There's office space. In any case, in city areas, there's a lot of space. So if you depart from the idea that people still want to connect, even when they work from home, you can even think about the idea, okay, let's create a kind of a concept of a neighborhood canteen, where all those people from work from home, they go down for lunch to have lunch and meet other people. It's a totally different perspective. And the idea, for example, we have now a lot of people working in Zoku during the day in the loft. That was an idea that wasn't very common in the beginning, and that's the same thing with a telephone that you can make movies with and music and all those kind of things. But you now start to see that there's a kind of a latent demand that people say, oh, actually that solves a problem of me. And if you can build a kind of a concept around neighborhood canteens where the focus is to have a relatively affordable priced meal, but at the same time meet other people, and you create a kind of concept around that. I think that would work.
You're sort of going back to the community housing.
Exactly.
And the food court system, that's also...
And I think there are a lot of big catering companies in the Netherlands. They have this problem, and well, I think we all can conclude at the table it's going to happen. We're going to have this neighborhood kind of things. Who's going to be the first? That's a big question.
That's why it's so good that there are people like Hans in the industry.
Definitely.
They can see the opportunities.
No,
there are a lot of people.
What also triggered me a little bit in your story is that we just said like, hey, we made changes, we tried out new things, what will stick and what will go back. And you actually just said like, hey, for a lot of these restaurants, it was a solution to a problem, but now that they can go back to their old ways, they prefer to go to their old ways, which is still very much a tricky situation right now, because if we don't obey the rules, if more people will get infected, we will go back to the situation 3-4 months ago. So how do you as a group see that mentality? Like, is it just people being people, or are we missing a certain entrepreneurial skill of trying to have a backup plan, maybe even for that? Or is that something that they now have, where it's like we're focusing on our main thing, which is the physical getting together and experience, but if we get back to a second lockdown, we'll have plan B waiting, which is our online delivery service?
Sure.
Most of them are still surviving.
Yeah.
And they are in the moment right now. You can make a plan for a second lockdown, but it is today, and today you have to work your ass off to
Get the customers.
to get it to get it done today or maybe tomorrow. So I don't think a lot of people are working on we don't have it a second lockdown plan B, because we're still working on our plan E or something since the start of the crisis.
And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but I think like from the financial support side, like a lot of pushback came from how can it be that so many companies are so fragile and that so many of our SMEs aren't surviving? Why or only have a 1 month or 2 month runway and then they are going to tip over? Do you see this crisis having the strongest ones survive? Is it a sort of natural selection that we're prolonging with government support, or is the government support actually gonna get us through it in a way as well? Just an open. I don't have a yes or no in this situation, but
I think it depends a little bit on which stage you as a company are.
Yeah.
Because I believe that there are very well-run companies which are in a relatively early stage, very successful pre-crisis, but this crisis is so strong that you never could have been prepared for that and unexpected. And of course, there are also companies which were already operating at a very low side, and there will be partly new selection, but a normal natural selection. But at the same time, also, there will be a lot of companies who are just unfortunate to be on the wrong time, wrong place, and then they will not be. They will not survive. So that is a little bit the. I mean, we are actually very happy with the government's support over the last. I mean, really amazing. And I always tell everybody that this is one of the best countries where you can be during such a crisis, because otherwise it would have been severe. But at the same time, it's a kind of a wake-up call for all companies that you have to adapt. I mean, this is a kind of a reality. And we have stop-loss scenarios. So we thought about, okay, if a second lockdown comes in, if the revenue goes below that, and we thought about all those different plans, what we're going to do then. Because for the simple reason, we learned that we don't have a lot of time. And given the fact that was also a little bit, it just takes time to think out, to go out in uncharted territory. I mean, we've never thought about, of course, we thought about a stress scenario where we had 75% occupancy, which was very stressful. And then we ended up at 20 at some day. We said, I mean, you cannot be prepared for that. But we learned that also from that point of view, how we run our company is of far more short term. It's okay, what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow, what are we going to do? And I think that definitely helps you to survive, but I'm also expecting that there definitely will be a number of restaurants and hotels, they will not survive.
And it makes it easier for smaller companies to change, to think about how we are going to change for like these big company, catering companies with 2,000 employees in
long
the country.
Contracts and rental contracts. And
yes, indeed. You cannot change from the one day to the other. But when you're a startup, for example, you can change much faster. So that's one thing I think that you will see that in the end, maybe this year they will still survive because we have the government helping us. But I think from next year we'll see that bigger companies, they cannot survive because in the long term they were too big to change so fast. And for smaller companies, it's easier to make these changes. Yeah.
And how do you see that within the wholesale sector?
Supply side. No, I mean, I think for us, what we're doing right now is also obviously responding to consumer demand. And I mean, I shared with you, we're launching a new range of daily health shots with rooibos as the key ingredient. And you know, there's definitely a shift in consumer demand for health and wellness. I mean, it's been a long trend building up, but now it's just gone into full force. So I think always responding to what people want and what your consumers want and what's top of mind for them is of course a key action that you can take and that you should always be on top of it. So for us it's looking at the product portfolio as well and just making sure that we have the right product for where people are at and I think that we are doing a good job in that.
So we tapped on a couple of very interesting things. Maybe to close it off, looking forward, end of 2020, 2021. What's next? What's next for you? What's next for the business that you're in? Marie, for you, it's maybe even a more interesting question because you just stepped down.
So for me, just coinciding, it's a bit of a coincidence how it's all come together. But this is an end of an era for me. I've been with Bos for 10 years, and I've now operationally stepped out of the business just 2-3 weeks ago. So on a personal level, this is a really interesting. I'm in a very fortunate position that I do have now the time and the space and the headspace and to really rethink and about the next chapter in my career and my life, and it's I'm very excited about it, and I'm personally very optimistic about what will come out of this for me, and also just my own experience during the lockdown slowdown over the last few months, like reconnecting with my own passions again, and having been more at home and realizing what's important and tapping into your own values again. I think there's something very powerful in that. And to be honest, like before, I literally just did not have the time for that. I was so on the run. I was so stretched out, like working like crazy hours. So for me, it's really quite a reflective time, but at the same time, I already feel there's an expansiveness, there's an expansive energy about what the future holds, and I am optimistic. Yeah, I don't quite at this point I don't know what that will be, but the future's wide open. Yeah,
amazing. And for you, like Hans?
I'm quite optimistic as well. For the hospitality industry, the food sector this year, and I also think next year, from the financial point of view, it's a disaster, and I think it will be long term after 2020, 2021. We will still feel that. It will take a long time. But on the other hand, this time. The crisis asks us for change, and we have to be creative if we want or not. But we have to come up with new ideas, and that's really interesting to see all these new initiatives. And I think it will be even more when the rush is a little bit down and people really have the time to get to come with new ideas. I think it will be a wonderful year.
Oh, that's a very positive one. But I think that sort of commends the three of you, what I said at the beginning as well. You're innovators. You see opportunities in the market and see solutions where others maybe see problems. So maybe Hans.
There are also problems.
Of
it's
course,
not a big hallelujah because it's a terrible. It's a crisis.
Of course.
But from this crisis, new things can come up and
there's a
start
famous
to grow.
quote. I don't know who said it. It's like never waste a good crisis. So I guess I mean you're exactly in that position. You're not wasting the crisis.
No, not at all.
You're absolutely.
At the same time, I would not call it positive. I'm
Yeah.
pretty realistic of the outlook for the next 6 months, which is not good. I mean, still people are not flying. We might end up in second measures,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of insecurity in the market. So that's the realistic part. But I think we as a company are extremely positive, given the fact that by coincidence we're very well positioned to, given the fact that our rooms are, or our lofts are so well equipped for work from home, and that the bed is hidden,
Yeah.
and our concept basically, we have a lot of opportunities to go into more hybrid models, to create, we are a home office hybrid, but this office part, we can work on that even. And fortunately, we work together with a kind of a team internally who is, well, very positive as well. There's a very good vibe within the company, which is mainly focused, okay, there are a lot of opportunities, let's do this, let's do that, let's experiment. Let's also fail, but fail fast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we try out a lot of things, and that, I mean, for me, it's very refreshing as well what's going on at the moment. And at the same time, I fully agree with you. There are also a lot of sad stories, I feel. There's quite a lot of pain also with a lot of colleagues I know. So hopefully we are able to tackle this together, and well, we're in a different position in a year from now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think you said it very well with the quotes. We're all the same storm, but we're in different boats.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how we'll come out of it in the end. Thank you so much for joining in, for sharing your insights, your experiences from your point of view and the companies that you represent, and your own personal backgrounds. I think, well, we discussed a couple of very interesting things, and I'm very interested to see what the future is going to bring and where we'll be next year. So maybe we'll do a tune-up at that time with all of you to see where you're at the moment.
Great.
And I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thank you.